today we are going to be in chapter 43 and 44. And like I said, I'm not. This should have been a week. Maybe I should have put 3 chapters in here. But it just dawned on me that we're like that close to the end of school. So one thing I want to point out is that like we read through here, and I mean it does all this makes good stories and stuff like that. But to give it a kind of different perspective is to actually think like everything that we're reading is historical events. I mean, you got to think we have started from in Genesis, from creation, and then the Noah that everybody hears about when they first even start in on church stuff, and then like all these the stuff with Pharaoh. So I mean, like you got to really sometimes set back and think like, okay, this all really happened. These are real people, like this Pharaoh guy. That Joseph is second in command to. I mean, he was really sitting on the thrones probably when the pyramids were getting built and all that. Like it's just kind of cool and crazy all at the same time to think that these are like world history actual events that took place. It's not just stories that we're reading. Like you can go back. Well, I don't remember which one it was, but one of the bad dudes that we've read about, his line. There's actually still historical pages or books that have been written that people have kept that can trace their genealogy back to that guy. And I know I mentioned, but I don't remember who it was. If it was Esau or I can't remember exactly. It might have been even one of Noah's kids. But they can trace their lineage back to him. So it's just kind of neat. It just kind of helps put it in a different perspective. That man, yes. These are good biblical stories, got life lessons, but yet it's actual stuff that's really happening in real life. All right, so chapter 43, verse 1, it says, "Now the famine was still severe in the land." This isn't the first famine that we've heard about, in Genesis. There's actually more famines throughout Scripture. But one thing I kind of want to point out, just to not overlook, like God uses famines a lot. So if you actually go all the way to the end to Revelation 6, about the seals, the judgment seals, there's in the 3rd and 4th one there's famine. So, and you'll even talk in Revelation, like any famine that's ever happened before is nothing like what happens there at the end. It says here this is severe famine right here. So imagine if it's severe then, like how much worse is it going to be in the Revelation time. All right, so chapter 2 or verse 2. "So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, 'Go back and buy us a little more.'" So this is Jacob and the boys. Remember, they come back home. So they've eaten everything that Joseph had given them, and now they're hungry again. Okay, and then verse 3, "But Judah said to him, 'The man warned,'" and the man being Joseph, "'warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" So Judah right here, we're going to be transitioning again. We've done that kind of the main characters of stories. So Judah, now we're going to transition to see Judah becoming the most important brother that we hear about. He's or like the lead role he's taken. Reuben, was the firstborn. He's kind of fell away. Simeon's fell away. But Judah now is coming back to the top, which is super fascinating because you got to remember in the back of your head, Judah is the line we get Jesus from, the Lion of Judah. So this is going to play a kind of a prominent role in the next several chapters. All right, so verse 4 for a while. "If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" So that's twice he's saying it. He wants to make it very important, like, hey, we cannot go back unless we bring Benjamin, the youngest brother, with us. Verse 6, "Israel," also known as Jacob, asked, 'Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?' They replied, 'The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living?' He asked us. 'Do you have another brother?' We simply answered his questions. How were we to know? He would say, bring your brother down here. And I wonder, and we're going to see like subtle things like this. I always curious, like when I was going through this, like, was there any bells starting to go, especially later on in this chapter and the next chapter? Like, wait a minute, why was he asking about her dad? Why was he asking about her brother? You know, when they were talking to Joseph, I just was curious if any bells was going off. Like, man, this guy seems like he knows us. But apparently they never caught on, especially when we get later in the chapters. Verses 8 through 10. Then Judah said to Israel his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. Because everybody there he's talking about, because I mean they're in the famine, they're about out of food. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. So what he's saying is like, hey, we've jacked around long enough. We need this food bad. Like, just let me have Benjamin. I promise to bring him back. We need to get going. I could have made this trip twice here, and we could have had plenty of food. So Judah, you know, like I said, he's taking the lead role here. So God has had to have softened Judah's heart over the last 20-ish years. Because if you remember back several chapters ago, Judah was the one that actually spearheaded the whole plan to sell Joseph in the first place. And then here he is, you know, like willing to take Benjamin, because, I mean, he knows Benjamin is the favorite just like Joseph was. But, hey, he's willing, like, hey, I promise you on my life that I'm going to bring him back. So his heart's gotten softened over the years, and we'll actually see it even more as we read through here. And another bad thing, you got to remember, Judah did. He slept with his own daughter-in-law, okay, and then wanted her dead for it until she was like, oh, wait, here's your signet ring and staff or whatever all that was. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, my bad. So he went from being a pretty bad dude to now getting more in line. All right, verse 11. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm and a little honey, some spices, myrrh, some pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. So it seems like, okay, hey, he's going to get all these gifts for the man. They don't know it's Joseph. But you got to remember, Jacob and the whole family, I mean, they've been wealthy. We've read it throughout Genesis a lot. You know, God has built this tribe, this clan, so to say, up. So he's just giving them, wanting to use these as gifts to Joseph. Like the spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, almond, like that was all stuff that they were good at raising. 13 and 14. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. So Jacob's going to allow him to take Benjamin. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother, and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Okay, so there's a little bit going on in verse 14. The first thing is, I'll point out, so that when he said, so that he will let your other brother, okay, that is talking about Simeon that's left back in jail. And once again, there's no name. It's not like, hey, let Simeon out of jail. No, just your other brother. And everything I read there in 14, that the first part of 14, it says, and may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man. Everybody called it a prayer. Like, that was his prayer. Like, hey, you know, when we ask God, like, hey, have mercy on us, protect us. That's exactly what Jacob right here is doing. But if you notice, he saves this for the last thing to do. He should have been praying first thing, like, hey, when they were about out of food, hey, let's pray about it. Let's go send you off to Egypt, pray about it for protection and everything. But no, like, they done made one trip, now they got to make another trip. And then he's like, oh, well, I guess if I got to give up my last favorite son, now we'll pray about it. You know what I mean? Instead of doing it first. When reading through this, so we got the prayer, and then so that he will let your other brother, meaning Simeon, and Benjamin come back with you, okay? Grant you mercy before the man so that he will let your brother and Benjamin come back to you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he's already, I think, thinking that they ain't coming back. That's right. Jacob is already assuming Benjamin's going to be gone. Simeon's going to stay there because he's like, if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. He's kind of like, okay, I know what's going to happen. And we do that. We fall in the same trap. And it actually brings me, man, I forget where it is, but I know we've covered it at one point in time. But if you're praying already expecting the worst or whatever, you're not going to get what you're asking for. I can't remember where that was that we talked about that. But you should be praying for wisdom to help you understand what's going on. And if you're already praying and already second guessing, like, okay, I'm going to pray this knowing that it ain't going to do any good. I mean, it's not, you know what I mean? Because your heart ain't in it. I have to look that up. It just popped to my head. But that, I know we talked about it sometime or another. I just don't have the verses to back it up. All right, so 15 and 16. So the men took the gifts and double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of the house, take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare dinner. They are to eat with me at noon. So, inviting any Hebrew at this time into the house of an Egyptian, that is not whatsoever a custom at the time. So, this is another one of those things, like, a little bell should be going off, like, okay, or they should either be worried, petrified, like, hey, why are we going in? Is this guy going to kill us when we get into the house? Or, is there some other kind of reason why he's letting us in? Because, I mean, they think this Joseph is an Egyptian because he's looking the part, acting the part. But it just wasn't common for, well, if you remember when Joseph had to get out of jail, or when he got out of jail, they bathed him, shaved him, and all that because, that's all part of the Egyptian culture. So having them come into an Egyptian house was not custom, but they don't realize who Joseph is. All right, so 17 for a while there then. The man did, the steward, that is, the man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now, the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, we are brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. So they're petrified. They know they are not usually welcome into an Egyptian house. 19. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. Please, sir, they said, we came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found his silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks. So they're trying to explain, like, because they're petrified. They're trying to rationalize with the steward, like, hey, this is what's happened. We're coming clean. We don't really want to die right here in this house. And then 23. It's all right, he said. Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. Then he brought Simeon out to them. So, Joseph had been talking about the Lord, okay, so much from the time he was a slave in Potiphar's house, and then to jail, and then now even in second in command of all of Egypt, he's been talking about God so much that even Joseph's steward, his staff member right here, knows who God is. Now we don't know, like, has he converted to Christianity? Is he, is he a follower of God? Is he still an Egyptian? Is he still following all the Egyptian God? That we don't know, but he at least knows about God, because Joseph, and everywhere that he has went, he's like that sponge that when life has squeezed him, God has come out. Everybody around him seems to know who God is. And is that a lawnmower? Oh yeah, they were out there mowing. Because he told him, don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you the treasure. So the steward knows that because of Joseph and his God, that he was merciful on his brothers that gave him back the silver and all that. So he knows it's not Joseph doing it. He says God did it for you through Joseph. If I kind of made that make sense. So Tony Evans writes this, and this was pretty good. So are you, because Joseph spoke about God everywhere he went. So are you speaking about God? And I put in capital letters, in every moment of your life, in the moments of adversity, just like the jail, being sold into slavery, as well in the moments of prosperity. It's easy to worship God, praise God, talk about God when life's going good, but when you're in them ruts, when it doesn't seem to you, to human flesh, that things are going great, but God always has a purpose and a plan. It's never out of his control. But are you still talking about God? And so the brothers, after hearing this, especially, if you're going into an Egyptian house and you really shouldn't be there, and all of a sudden this steward just starts talking about, hey, your God, the God of your father gave you this money back. You got to be relieved. These brothers had to be like, oh, take a huge, it had to be 100 pounds lifted off of each one of their backs. They're like, one, we're not going to die. And how fascinating would it be to know, like, you go walk down the inner city of Chicago and somebody comes up to you and wants to start talking about God, you're going to kind of be like, oh, yeah, come here. Yeah, you know what I mean? And don't say that you're not good. That's right. That's right. So, it's the same situation. They're in a strange house, strange country, people that usually don't like them all that well. And all of a sudden, this guy's talking about God here because of Joseph. It had to be a whole stress relief. And that knowing that the debt that they thought they owed was relieved, okay, by who? By God. And then this verse right here, that is just great foreshadowing of Jesus, because he took care of the debt of our sin on the cross, okay, just like God right here. The steward says, oh, your God took care of your debt that you owed for the food. It's just great foreshadowing for the gospel. All right, so we'll go all the way down to 29 then. So at 24, the steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. Everybody know what fodder is? I always thought that was the coolest word. You don't know what fodder is?
It's gotta be hay or whatever.
Yeah, hay and so so really fodder, like now what we turned it into, well, now we don't even use the word fodder anymore. But like, okay, say you cut wheat, okay, and you're taking the heads off, and the grain's going in the combine, everything, all the junk stuff, that was usually the fodder. That's what my dad always called fodder. But I think back here it's actually meaning their food, their bedding, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, usually the fodder was kind of like the junk stuff after you got the grain out. Yeah, the straw. That's it. That's pretty much it. But I think here it's more for the, like, meaning food and bedding all kind of in the same.
I like that word.
I know, it's always cool. Fodder. Yeah.
Sell some fodder?
Yeah. Here's a bale of fodder for you. Somebody look at you funny.
Yeah.
And provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon, because they had heard that they were to eat there. And why at noon? Because their big meals were, I guess, apparently, what I was reading a lot at noon, because at night it's dark and they, save on your candles and whatnot. So they kind of had their big celebration meals at noon. So, yeah. So 26. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house. And here we go again. They bowed down before him to the ground, just like his dreams. He asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" And they replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well." And they bowed low. And see right there, they add low to pay him honor. 29. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." So here's some more than bells. Obviously, he's asking about their father Jacob, his father Jacob. And then he asks, "Hey, is this your youngest brother you're telling me about?" He knows it's Benjamin. He hadn't seen Benjamin since he was little. But he knows it's Benjamin. But between asking about their father and everything else that he's done, and then all of a sudden here, he blesses Benjamin right there. It said, God, because it says, and he said, so Joseph said, "God be gracious to you, my son." He blesses Benjamin. I mean, that had to be a huge bell. Here, you think this dude's an Egyptian, and all of a sudden he's talking about God blessing somebody. I mean, something had to be going off. You know what I mean? But that would be another huge stress relief. Like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's talking about God, right? This Egyptian is. But we don't know. But it just seems like something had to be piquing their interest, I would think, a little bit. All right, so verse 30. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother Joseph, hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there, because he hadn't seen Joseph or Benjamin for 20-ish years. Obviously, he's grown a lot. He finally gets to see him. So he went and hid, and then he'll come back. And 31, after he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, "Serve the food." So this is like just a little strange fact, okay? Nowhere else in the Old Testament do we ever see again anybody referring to them like as washing their face. We hear washing the feet all the time, but this is the only time we hear about washing their face. So why? Don't know, but at this time it must have been pretty important.
Well, he was washing the tears
Yeah.
off his face. And if he was dirty, you'd have seen
That's right.
the marks on him.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. And it was just kind of neat, like what I read, that like nowhere else do we find it in the Old Testament. They said Old Testament, so maybe it is somewhere in the New Testament. But what I was reading, it said nowhere in the Old Testament do you hear of anybody else washing their face. So I thought that was kind of I put a strange fact in my note.
Smiley face.
That's right. All right, so 32 and 33. They served him by himself, that meaning Joseph, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to the Egyptians. And then 33. The men had been seated before him in order of their age, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. So I think that right there, they looked at each other with astonishment. I think they were like, huh. Because how they could know their ages, when you get, above 40 to 60, like, you can't tell some differences in ages, you know what I mean? From, like, say, 60 to 20, you probably can. But some of that middle stuff, there ain't no way that they would have been able to point them exactly. And I'm assuming some of these brothers are probably pretty close in age, too. Within a year or so of each other. So they're sitting there looking like, oh my gosh, this guy just put us in seating before, or according to our ages. And then also, it says Joseph ate by himself, so even he didn't eat with the Egyptians. So I wonder if that was maybe a little bell too that kind of went off, like, hey, he ate by himself too, so maybe the Egyptians still didn't even want to eat with Joseph or vice versa. You know what I mean? So, 34 here. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. All right. The first thought when I read that is that, okay, Joseph is treating Benjamin better because, I mean, he's the only full-blooded brother, okay? But then here's something, I didn't think of it. It's stuff I read, stuff I learned, stuff I researched. So second thought, Joseph is actually, and it seems to make sense the farther we're going to read in the 44, Joseph is actually giving Benjamin more food, okay, right here, to test his brothers, okay, to see if they are repenting, you know, of what they've maybe done before, to see if they're going to get jealous like they did with Joseph. You know, hey, this dude's the favorite. Here we go again. Let's sell him. But. And that seems to make sense, especially what we're going to read into a little bit farther. It seems more likely that maybe this was a test of Joseph, because it seems like he's going to kind of keep doing it a little bit too, to actually see if the brothers are going to be repenting or if they're going to go back to the whole get jealous, do bad stuff to Benjamin just like they did to Joseph. And then the part where it says drank freely, okay? If this was a test, it seems like the brothers passed the test when it uses the words drank freely. It seems like they were actually all getting along. You know what I mean? If I was, say, mad at Russell here and we were all having a big get together, you know, I'd probably be still giving him evil looks or something like that. You know, especially if you're starting to drink, you know, wine, alcohol, or whatever. Stuff comes out when that happens. You know what I mean? But here it says they drank freely. We didn't really learn about anybody getting upset. The brothers seem to have passed this part of the test.
Celebration over passing their test.
Well, no. So they're just having the feast because Joseph wanted them to have the feast. But I think that was all part of Joseph's plan. Hey, here's your little wine, because you know when alcohol happens, you know, a lot of times some of your true self comes out. You know what I mean? Do things that you shouldn't. But since they were during the feast, drinking freely means they're getting along. If you go back to the Hebrew words, you know, basically everybody's getting along there. And there didn't seem no disdain or discord amongst all the brothers, even though Benjamin got 5 times as much food. Nobody really brought it up or anything like that or seemed too upset about it. So, all right, we'll go into 44, verses 1 and 2. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house: fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did just as Joseph said. All right. And I think this goes right along with that test, okay? Joseph is setting up another test to see if the older brothers are going to turn on Benjamin, or just like they did with Joseph, or are they going to stay like, hey, repented of it and be like, hey, let's move on, let's not do that again. So we'll learn more about this cup here in just a second. So 3 through 5. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done. All right, so like I said, Joseph is setting up this test. He sends them on their way with all their stuff. They got the food, they got all their silver back, and then Benjamin has this cup, this silver cup. And then he sends his steward out there to go catch up to him because he wants to trick him, wants to kind of freak him out a little bit, and he wants to have him catch up to him and be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? And, we were good to you, and here you're doing this evil thing." And they're going to be like, "What? What are you talking about? We didn't do nothing." All right, but so that's what's going on. But I do want to bring up this divination. So in verse 5, does anybody else's translation have something different than divination, divination, or anything?
What verse are you on?
Verse 5, towards the end, it says, "Isn't this cup of my master's drink, my master drinks from, and also uses for divination?"
No, that's the same word.
Yeah.
Okay, so that must be the pretty prominent. That's all I could find too. So I had, yeah.
I mean, mine's got the footnotes that talks more about the cup. If you,
Yeah, well, I'll get if
Okay.
it. Yeah, let me say what I got, and then if you have more, add to it. Okay, so divination, I had to look it up because I didn't really understand what it was or anything, and so if you just go to the Google search on the phone, it's the practice of seeking knowledge of the future, often through supernatural or occult means. So you're basically wanting to try to predict the future through supernatural or cultish means. Examples that they had was tarot cards, astrology, things like that. Okay, stuff that we're actually told not to mess with. And now it says there in verse 5, it says, "Isn't this the cup of my the cup of my master drinks from, and also uses for divination?" So, but everything I read, everything I studied, anybody I listened to, no one actually thinks Joseph participated in that divination, but like the Egyptians must have. And that's why this steward here is using that language to kind of set up the brothers. But nobody really thinks that Joseph, being the man of God that he was, actually participated in the divination. But all the Egyptians did around him, so that everybody would have been familiar with that term. Not us, because like I said, I had to look it up. And that's why they, to the Egyptians, it was super important, and that's why this cup then was a little important. So you got anything else on it, Ben?
that's pretty well it.
Yeah.
It just said that, what you said, the goblets were used for predicting the future. Kind of says how they do it. And then it also said Joseph wouldn't have needed it.
Right.
Is what it said there.
Yeah, I mean,
God told him everything. He didn't need it, but he might have.
that's a good point.
He might have acted like he used it, or
Yeah,
what I mean?
Well, maybe
Possibly just had it and they thought he was using it,
Yeah,
but he wasn't.
that's right.
Something like that.
maybe that he was kind of hiding the fact that he was a Hebrew and an Egyptian nation, and the steward was kind of hiding that from his brothers.
Yeah.
That way, they didn't really catch one yet about it being Joseph.
Yeah. Kind of leave it out there so they think like, hey, he's using this.
He's an Egyptian.
Yeah, that's right.
But he uses it again. We'll get to it in verse 15.
Okay.
It's used again by Joseph.
Okay. Well, and like the cup.
The divination.
Yeah. Okay.
How he discovers. He says to his brothers. So you'll see it when we get to 15.
All right. And so, as far as this divination, because I think this is important when you get into words like this. So the tarot cards, the astrology. I'm gonna even put it like your Ouija boards, all that kind of stuff. And actually, through my growing of faith, I'm less and less attracted to this whole Halloween business and stuff too. But in Leviticus 19:26 and Deuteronomy's 18:10, divination and in one of them it says other sorcery is strictly prohibited in the laws of Leviticus then. And then some of them lists that we've ran across about how the sexually immoral, the drunkenness, all them, and what was that word? Russell, we had it like 15 times in Revelation. That we get our word pharmaceuticals from. Magic arts, it uses in that deals in the magic arts, which is actually where we get our word pharmaceuticals from. Is all people that will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Let's see if I know I had it. Well, anyways, that we're not supposed to be in it, so I wouldn't go be a tarot card reader if I was you. That's basically the gist out of it. All right, so verse 6. When he caught up with them, the steward, he repeated those words to them. But they said to him, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves." That last verse there sounds a lot like, remember when Jacob telling Laban, his father-in-law, right? Yeah. But about them little statues. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, we no, ain't nobody got that." And then the one, too many names, but the one wife was sitting on him and was like, "Hey, I can't get up," But he said the same thing. If anybody, Jacob said the same thing. If anybody's found to have it, they'll die. Well, that's what the brothers are saying here. Because to them, I mean, none of them took it. They don't know that Joseph is setting all this up for them. All right, verse 10. "Very well then," he said, "let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame." So the steward here kind of pumps the brakes a little bit. I mean, because the brothers are like, "Hey, whoever has it's going to die." And the steward knows what's going on. He put it in the sack. He's like, well, okay, ain't nobody going to die. It's just somebody's going to become a slave, okay? You don't want nobody being dead out there, and then Joseph really be mad. Hey, you didn't do what you were supposed to. So the steward had to pump the brakes a bit because he knows where the cup is, okay, and he does not want Benjamin harmed in any way. All right, so 11 and 12. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. Oldest to youngest, why? I feel like mostly just to build the drama. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So ending with the youngest, and then the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Verse 13. At this they tore their clothes, then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. So I'm assuming the tearing of the clothes. Remember, Reuben did the same thing when they sold Joseph. When he got to the sister and realized he was sold, he tore his clothes. He was so mad. So they got their clothes torn off, and so they just marched right back to the city, the Egyptian city, not home. They're not going home. They're going back to Joseph. All right, 14. Joseph was still in the house when Judah, here comes Judah again, and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?" So there's your point. Yeah. All right, 16. "What can we say to my lord?" Judah replied, "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup." All right, so a little bit more foreshadowing, okay? These brothers here are standing in front of Joseph. To them, my lord here, they keep calling him. And Judah's like, "Hey, what can we say? How can we prove our innocence? Tell us what we need to do. We're not worthy to be standing here. God has uncovered our guilt, okay?" But the foreshadowing is, so they're standing in front of Joseph, and they keep calling him Lord. The foreshadowing for us is, how can we stand before a holy God and try to clear our names? Because they're wanting to clear their name in front of Joseph. Here we want to stand before Christ, and I did this right. I might have did that wrong, but I was doing this right. We want to try to clear our own name, and it's not going to work. But Jesus took care of that for us, just like what's gonna happen here. All right, so we'll do 17. But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who is found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace." All right, so starting in 18, so 18 through 34 is, I mean, you could nickname it Judah's speech, okay, because it's all going to be coming from Judah. He's going to use the word father 15 times in just these few verses. And we are going to see a changed Judah. Remember the two things that we talked about earlier. He was the one that kind of spearheaded the selling of Joseph. He slept with his own daughter-in-law and wanted to have her killed until he realized, oh, I'm the one that slept with her here. So we're going to see a changed person in Judah. And the pinnacle of it, okay, it's not going to come till like verse 33 and 34, till the very end. So, and another thing to point out in the speech that we're going to read here, Judah will never bring up, he brings up a lot of stuff that's already happened, but he's never, you know, when they've talked to Joseph, but he's not going to bring up of them being accused of being spies. You know, remember that from last week? Joseph was saying, "Oh, you're spies. You know, prove me wrong." Or he ain't going to bring up Simeon being in jail either. So he kind of he don't want to bring up anything bad. He's always only trying to bring up like the gooder stuff. All right, so
the chapter that says Judah's plea for Benjamin.
oh, does it really? Yeah, see, that's fantastic. Yeah, I had to draw squiggly, right, write my own title for it. Verse 18, then Judah went up to him and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself." That word salad there is basically saying, hey, with all due respect, is basically what he's trying to say. I know you're important. Another way to kind of rephrase it is that, hey, I know you're in charge, and I am not, but I'm needing your grace right here, is what he's telling Joseph. And that's kind of cool. Like, hey, I'm needing the grace from Joseph. Kind of cool coming from Judah, head of Jesus, and now we need Jesus's grace. So it's just kind of neat how God just orchestrates all that. All right, so now we're going to go all the way down through 30. My Lord asked his servants, "Do you have a father or a brother?" And we answered, "We have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me so I can see him for myself.' And we said to my Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die.' But you told your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again.' When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my Lord had said. Then our father said, 'Go back and buy a little more food.' But we said, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.' Your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since.'" So Joseph is actually getting a little thing about, hey, like, what his dad been thinking about has happened to me. So he's kind of learning this finally after all these years. And 29, "If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery." 30, "So now if the boy is not with us, when I go back to your servant, my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with this boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die." Judah is actually, so there in verse 30, he is talking about how closely he is to Benjamin. It seems like Judah is actually having some compassion for his father there in 30, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life. You know, we don't want him to die. You know, in 29, it talks about, he said his gray head's going to go down to the grave in misery, and Judah does not want this to happen to his father Jacob. So 31 sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all my life. Then 33 and 34, it's repentance, basically. Judah is willing, okay, what we're going to read here, to take the place of Benjamin. So 33, now then, please, let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy. So in place of Benjamin, I'm going to put myself there. And let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father. So not only is he having compassion for Jacob, he's actually has grown enough, Judah has, and is willing to take the place of Benjamin. Seems like he has gotten to Judah to true repentance. Like, hey, I failed this first time. We sold the one brother off. Don't know I'm talking to him, but we sold him off. I'm not going to let anything happen to Benjamin here. So, anything else? Russell, you're quiet tonight.
Sorry.
Gosh. Ben, what? Oh, you closed that, Ben?
There.
Well, here, go back to. I'm going to stop that.